Welcome to Millbrook and the Trevor Zoo. I'm Nola Greenberg, and I want to welcome you to this month's special episode of Live from the Trevor Zoo. It is great to be with you this afternoon. I'm a fifth former, or a junior here at Millbrook School, and this is my second year at the school. I'm from New York City, where I previously attended a large city high school my freshman year. During that time, I realized I wanted to be at a smaller school, but with a big campus in a natural setting. Since Millbrook is only 90 miles from the city, it seems like the perfect fit for me. I loved exploring the school's 800-acre campus. The special community feeling of Millbrook is something that every student, faculty, and alum of the school can warmly say is what makes Millbrook, Millbrook. My community service here at Millbrook is the Environmental Council, which I am the head student leader along with two other students, and Millbrook's Director of Sustainability, Lee Schmidt. We help promote sustainability at school, following in the footsteps of Millbrook's environmental pioneers such as Janet Trevor and Jane Meggs. Along with countless other students before me, Environmental Council works to integrate environmental stewardship into programs, policies, and activities on campus. The Council recommends and implements projects that support Millbrook's mission of stewardship of the natural world and our goal of carbon neutrality, which includes energy efficiency and conservation, community awareness and involvement, and renewable energy initiatives. Quite honestly, when I got to Millbrook, I didn't really care about the environment. But right away, I saw I could use my creativity as an outlet to be an advocate for nature and the planet. I like to see my ideas come to life and will continue to use my imagination and inspiration to help the environment and get the rest of the student body engaged. Of course, when asked who I see out in the world as an influence and hero right now, for me, that is Greta Thunberg. To see a young woman similar to my age so passionate about protecting the planet is incredibly inspiring. I just read her book, which is a collection of her speeches. She only sees the world in black and white. And when our generation looks at the daunting task ahead of us, trying to save the planet, there really is no room for anything in between. Just a reminder, please feel free to ask questions throughout today's episode. Type them in the comments and I will answer them towards the end of the show. So, during today's episode, we are going to talk about someone who is not only a hero of the environmental conservation movement, but also an alum of Millbrook School, Dr. Thomas Lovejoy, who graduated in Millbrook in 1959. Dr. Lovejoy passed away on Christmas Day last year, and we recently had a special assembly at Millbrook to share stories about Tom and enlighten Millbrook's current students about this remarkable man and his accomplishments. Thomas Eugene Lovejoy was born on August 22, 1941 in New York City. In the fall of 1955, Tom arrived at Millbrook with no interest in biology, but within a few weeks, and his exposure to Frank and Janet Trevor and the Millbrook Zoo, things changed very quickly for young Tom. In 2006, in celebration of Millbrook's 75th anniversary, we interviewed Tom about his experience at Millbrook. Let's take a look at what Tom had to say.
Frank Trevor was just, he was this larger-than-life figure. And even people who, went on to, have careers in the arts, still talk about, having taken biology with Frank Trevor. He was just bright and he was charismatic and full of energy and just a hard to resist kind of guy. He arrived at Millbrook in 1936 with a vehicle, a carry-all filled with animals that became the Millbrook School Zoo. I don't know how it began, but the requirement that everybody take biology in their first or second year was way, way ahead of its time. And I don't know how much that was Frank's persuasiveness and Ed Pulling's receptiveness, but that's the way it was set up. And I remember, getting the big letter about how many socks and this, that, and the other thing in the middle of summer before I went there, and it said you had to take biology, in your first or second year. So with sort of great prescience, I said to my parents, I'll take it the first year and get it over with. So I arrived at Millbrook School in the fall of 1955. Had 4 years, but the first 3 weeks were the key, and that's what flipped my switch in life in biology. So, my entire life trajectory goes back to that first brief time at Millbrook School. I sort of wanted to be this biologist explorer, Anywhere that would have been an adventure would have been fine. And then I sort of fell into an opportunity to go to the Amazon in 1965, when literally there was one road in the entire Amazon, sort of the heart of life on Earth. And interestingly enough, Frank Trevor had originally planned to go back to graduate school and do some kind of graduate thesis in the Amazon. So, that was sort of accidental. But, once you've been part of Millbrook, it's just always part of you.
Millbrook inspired Tom and kickstarted an amazing career in conservation. After Millbrook, Tom graduated from Yale University in 1964. He then started his lifelong research of the Amazon and earned a PhD from Yale in 1971. In 2011, we interviewed Tom once again when celebrating the Trevor Zoo's 75th anniversary. Tom reflected again how significant an impact Frank Trevor had on not only him, but generations of Millbrook students during those years. And Dr. Lovejoy explained how his career developed over the years from the launchpad of the Trevor Zoo.
He was an incredibly engaging personality, and he was wildly enthusiastic about his subject matter. He used the zoo, he used all the wonderful nature around the Millbrook campus as part of his teaching tools, really. And what I've come to realize is that, by the end of the year, I understood the outline of life on Earth as it was then understood, what today we call biological diversity. At the age of 15, I knew that. Frank wouldn't hesitate to bring an animal to the classroom. Any sense that Frank Trevor was just about the zoo is a very narrow interpretation, because he brought all of that right into the classroom, into the life of the school, and everybody, just had to take biology from Frank Trevor. So what I was not prepared for was the impact that Trevor's actually would have on me in the classroom. My first 3 weeks, and that was it. I'm going to be a biologist. I'm headed to Yale for undergraduate. Got started in the Amazon at a time when there was one road, 3 million people, and about 2 other biologists working in the Amazon. That was a biologist's dream. Got my PhD, and then I was looking for a job in 1973, and the World Wildlife Fund, when I started, was essentially the only international conservation organization in the United States. After about 14 years at the World Wildlife Fund, I got an opportunity to go to be an assistant secretary at the Smithsonian. Capitol Hill discovered there was an official at the Smithsonian who knew about environment. So I am taking Al Gore and Tim Wirth and John Hines down to the Amazon and working with the Brazilians to see if there was something the U.S. could do to make a difference about deforestation in the Amazon. That then led to my being asked to be on the first President Bush's Council of Advisors in Science and Technology, where we talked about things like climate change very early on. I then became head of the Heinz Center for Science, Economics, and the Environment. What pays my salary these days is George Mason University. I teach on problems in conservation and conservation biology. I have a research program that's now in its 33rd year in the middle of the Amazon. It's essentially the largest experiment in landscape ecology, and it looks at what happens when you break a forest up into fragments. I had the delight of the entire Casertano family at my favorite camp there in the Amazon. You sleep in hammocks and you walk around in the forest and see things and hear things. Over time, I've found that I don't really need to say a lot. Basically, I let the forest sell itself. Did I think at the time when I was a student at Millbrook that I'd be doing the kinds of things I'm doing today? Of course not. I'm so grateful for the background, because that's what put me in a position to make a difference.
And what a difference Dr. Lovejoy has made. Listing Tom's many accolades and accomplishments would take an entire show to list, but some of the highlights include President of the Amazon Biodiversity Center, Fellow at the United Nations Foundation, Professor at George Mason University, co-creator of the long-running PBS series Nature, and he is even credited with coining the long-term biological diversity, something which you saw he learned here at Millbrook. In 2012, Tom received the Blue Planet Prize, which for those of you who don't know is the environmental equivalent of the Nobel Peace Prize. Friends, colleagues, and peers dubbed him the Planet Doctor, which was a fitting title. Tom loves stories, so now we are going to hear a few stories of remembrance from his Millbrook friends who had the pleasure of knowing Tom well. First up is longtime Millbrook faculty member and current director of the Trevor Zoo, Dr. Alan Toussaint. Dr. T, take it away.
Thanks, Nola. Dr. Lovejoy, I said when I first met him, and was immediately corrected by him to Tom. Tom was a preeminent, world-famous scientist, government advisor, leader of many prestigious conservation organizations, and most importantly, defender of his beloved Amazon River basin. Yet for all that, he was always just Tom when he had any say. Friend, mentor, advisor, certainly a quiet jokester, an amazing human being. He always wanted to know what you were doing, regardless of your role in life, from philanthropist to teacher to janitor to farmer, from old to the very young. We were all the same to Tom, people with whom he wanted to help ensure the future of our planet. I had the pleasure of attending one of Tom's annual holiday wassail parties. Wassailing is an old English tradition which in general terms is a coming together of people of all walks of life to wish each other good health and fortune in the coming year. True to his form, Tom's wassails had all kinds of people sharing in the toasts. You could be discussing deep ocean studies with Sylvia Earle one moment and the qualities of a garden tractor with the guy next door in the next moment. But for sure, everyone felt welcome and all loved Tom. That was his true gift, bringing people together for the good of all. Thank you all, and thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Dr. T. I loved Dr. Lovejoy. I'm honored and privileged to have been able to call him such a good friend. This past Christmas was a sad day for the world, a sad day for Millbrook School when we lost him. I had first heard of Dr. Lovejoy when I was a third former, and at that time at Millbrook School, all third formers took biology. And we were doing a unit on island geography, and we learned about this scientist that was doing a forest fragmentation project in the Amazon, and that he was a Millbrook graduate. And so he had this really fascinating name and this incredible career. And yet he felt so distant from me and from my classmates that he was almost otherworldly. So when I returned to Millbrook in 2010 to be the director of admissions, I met Dr. Lovejoy's granddaughter, Emily, whom he really wanted to have attend Millbrook, but pretty quickly realized that it wouldn't be a perfect fit because she loved gymnastics so much. And obviously we don't offer that program. So Dr. Lovejoy was the sort of person who just appreciated the candor of that conversation. And ever since then, I feel like I had this growing, budding, and wonderful relationship with him. I would see him every time he was on campus, and then was able to take a trip of a lifetime to Camp 41 in the Amazon with my son Atticus, with my former advisor, Alan Toussaint, and his wife, Lynn Christensen, who is a professor of biology over at Vassar College. And learned on that trip of such a wonderful man. You know, you can Google him and you read about the Planet Doctor and you hear about the coined phrase of biodiversity that really he brought to the world. But what I learned was that he was a man who was humble and open and accepting, and who shared his story with me, that he arrived at Millbrook's campus somewhat of a confused boy, his words not mine, and then through work at the Trevor Zoo was completely inspired to create the career that he created and the legacy that I believe has forever changed the world for the better. So I love Dr. Lovejoy, and without further ado, I'd like to turn things over to my son, who will tell you a little bit about our trip to the Amazon.
The Amazon was one of the best places I've been and will probably be the best place I'll ever go. And that wouldn't have happened without Dr. Thomas Lovejoy. It was awesome. In the Amazon, I saw monkeys, frogs, tarantula hawks, leafcutter ants, snakes, and so much more. Dr. Lovejoy was fun, adventurous, and was a little naughty. He was fun because he wanted to show everyone everything everywhere. He was adventurous because he noticed every single animal in the trees, soaring through the sky, and on the ground. He was naughty because he would take this spider and put it in people's hammocks and scare them like crazy. Thank God that didn't happen to me. I wish he were still here. He meant a lot to me. He made this world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Atticus, Mr. Downs, and Dr. T for those amazing stories of Tom. In 2018, we sat down to interview Dr. Lovejoy for what would be the final time. We asked Tom about the way Millbrook School and the Trevor Zoo have grown and integrated their educational programs and his outlook for the future. Let's have a look at that clip from that interview.
So I'm Tom Lovejoy, and I like to make trouble for conservation. So I think what's, to me, really thrilling, this is not a static program. It's always changing. It's always looking for ways to be more effective. It's totally integrated into the education at Millbrook now. So it's really hard, in the end, to come to Millbrook and not actually appreciate the importance of stewardship of the natural world. The magic of biology, of sort of natural science, is that it's very accessible, when you're in your first year in Millbrook at that particular age. And if you're not going to get it in the classroom in a normal, formal way, getting it in these other ways, which is now guaranteed with the way things are structured, actually does the essential thing, which is to instill that sense of wonder at the right time in the educational process. In 1965, there was one national park in the entire Amazon. Today, more than 50% of the Amazon is under some form of protection. I mean, imagine 50% of the 48 states under some form of protection. It's an astounding achievement, and that's 8 different countries, right? Is it enough? No, because you have to manage the Amazon as a system, but it is one hell of a start.
A hell of a start indeed. It's very clear to me and everyone here at Millbrook and the Trevor Zoo that Tom was an environmental superhero and left a lasting legacy on Millbrook and the planet. My hope is that Millbrook can inspire more students to become like Tom, an advocate for conservation, preservation, and a more harmonious world. We are going to post that entire 2018 interview with Dr. Lovejoy on our YouTube channel, so please look there for it shortly. Okay, so let's hear your questions and I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. If you have any questions about Dr. Lovejoy, the Environmental Council, the science programs at Millbrook, or anything about the Trevor Zoo, just go ahead and ask in the comments here. Pat wants to know if Tom Lovejoy ever taught at Millbrook. Well, we found in the archives some notes that Tom Lovejoy did in fact teach ornithology for a brief period in the early 1970s, but he was often on campus as a special guest speaker throughout the years. He was always interested in sharing his love for Millbrook and the Trevor Zoo with others and brought many scientists to campus. He was also a lifetime member of Millbrook's Board of Trustees. Another question. Leo would like to know what were some of the activities that happened at Millbrook during Earth Week. We had an annual roadside cleanup, a campus picnic and a benefit concert. We had a night at the zoo, a green-themed lunch, an assembly honoring Dr. Joy, and academically, everyone on campus read one of Tom's many articles published in the New York Times from last November. We'll include a link to that article in the show notes. Olivia would like to know, what do you plan to do after you graduate from Millbrook? I am a junior, so I have another year here, but right now I plan to use my creativity to inspire and advocate for environmental and social issues. Okay, well, it looks like we don't have any more questions. So, if you have enjoyed this episode, I'd like to remind you that you can view all of our previous episodes of Live from the Trevor Zoo on our YouTube channel, which is at youtube.com/Trevor Zoo Millbrook. You can also watch our streaming cameras throughout the zoo 24 hours a day at www.millbrook.org/Trevor Zoo Live. Thanks for spending part of your Wednesday with us. If you're in the area, please come visit us in person. It is easy to make a reservation on our website, which is www.trevorzoo.org. We are open every day of the year from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. We'll be back here live from the Trevor Zoo soon. Thanks for watching.